So again, I am Tim Weinzapfel. I'm not going to go through my bio here, but I'll just suffice it to say Power BI and the Power Platform is my passion, along with other things such as R, Python, Gen AI, and anything else data related. And I am a co-author of the Power Apps Tips, Tricks, and Best Practices with another author, Andrea Pinios, and that was in process last year. So was excited to do that. But let's move into the presentation. And today I'm going to talk about 3 use cases. I love integrating the Power Platform, specifically Power Automate and Power Apps with Power BI, along with other things. So my first use case is going to be creating a more user-friendly way to export your data from your report in Excel through Power Automate. The second one is I'm actually using SharePoint, which is not part of the Power Platform, but it does tie in with my third use case, and connecting to SharePoint Document Libraries is great. So there's a lot of potential there that I have used in my own. So whole purpose today is just to show some of the use cases that I have done. There are many more, and which of course we've got 1 hour. So let's jump right into things. And again, put any questions. I will pause after each one to then kind of just address any key questions. All right, let's jump into the first use case. Going to jump over here. Sue, I just want to double check. You do see my Power BI report, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I can see it.
I want to make sure I'm sharing my screen and not my application. So common use case, and I run into this a lot, especially with data. So I've got a very simple report here, got a simple table. This is airline data, and tend to find people like to export data to Excel. And I actually have several use cases with Power BI, like doing data transformations, where I actually want data in Excel. And there's a lot of rows here. You see 144. So what do we do, right? We go here, we go to the nice little icon here, go to more options, and then go to export data, and you have all of the choices. I can dump it to Excel, CSV, and so on. The problem is this is just, I mean, how many users actually know to do this? So it's just not as user-friendly as one could be, especially if you have a lot of people, say, using your report. Now, I could certainly put, instructions here, but let me throw a little Power Automate button here. I've got a Power Automate button that I can actually just push here now. And in this case, I'm going to have it emailed to me. Now, I could also have this file saved to a SharePoint site or OneDrive, but I went ahead and triggered that, and it is going to export now this 144 records. It just came in. If I jump over to my email, here it is right here. And it is, I exported this to CSV. And if I click on it and I scroll all the way down, I'm going to see the 144 records. So this is great. This is a nice, easy way to integrate a simple Power Automate flow to do this. And I'm going to jump over to that real quickly just to kind of show you how this can be created quite easily. So jump over to Power BI. I'm now in Power BI Desktop. I got to make my button appear. If you have not worked in Power Automate and you're new to the Power Platform, the low code, no code environment is very easy to get into it. So even with something like this. So I'm going to go ahead, and the button here to add it, it's in the standard visuals. You could simply add your button, and then it does give you some instructions. And basically the easy thing is I want to add the data. And this is the data that I want to pass to the flow, which will then be converted into my CSV file. So in my case, if I click on my button that I've already created, you'll see I've just added the same fields as I am doing here. And this button is completely interactive. I'll just go ahead and remove this since we're going to use this one here. This button is completely interactive with the same table. In fact, I could actually take this button and convert it to a table, and it's going to show me the exact data, just as if it's a visual. So it's a great way to know what data you're passing to your button. So now that I've added the fields I want, I can go up here, hit the little edit button, and this is going to open me up into Power Automate. And this is the interface through Power BI which is what, so I don't even have to go to the separate Power Automate. And I'm going to have a quick list of all my flows. Now, here's where I can actually apply one. Quick tip, when you do apply a flow to a button, as in the example, that button I just clicked on does have a flow applied. The problem is there's no way that, there's no indicator as to what flow is applied. I wish Microsoft would fix that, but it's this one right here. I just happen to know that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and, if I was to create a new one, I would just go up here and create a new instant one. But since I've already created it, I'll just kind of show you exactly that. I mean, it's only like three steps here. When you create a new one, this first part here, which is the trigger, and that's what kicks it off. That's when the button is clicked, which kicks it off. There is an action called create CSV table. And if I actually go to find that, and I can actually search for it, create CSV, and it is a data operation table, and it is right here. It is one of the actions, and then it just needs to know what to create it from. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And all I did was choose the dynamic output. This is where I'm now pulling in that table, that integration with Power BI, this dynamic content. By clicking on here, I have all these options, but at the bottom, I have this Power BI data, which is the data in a tabular form. And that's all I need to do to create that CSV file. And this is in the right output that it needs. I can then use the send an email. If I go up here to find it, I use Outlook. So that is the connector I use. And I can, find it here and just go ahead and add that, which I've done here. And again, who do I want it to go to? Well, because I'm in Power BI, I can get access to some dynamic fields. And right here, the user email, whoever clicked on it, is available, which makes it very easy to do that. And then I just include some text, do the advanced options, give it a name, and then give it the output of this previous file. And that's all you have to do. And now you can get a quick and easy way to export data. And in my case, I've even added another one where I could save it to a SharePoint file. So it kind of gives you all these different options to do this, to help maybe provide that extra use case to somebody. Now, there's one problem with this approach. This approach works great, but you are limited to 1,000 rows. Because if I go back to this report, I'm going to go back here, this table, the only thing that is going to be passed to Power Automate is the first 1,000 rows. So if I go ahead and clear this data set, I've got 3,000 rows, this will not work. So this is a great approach when you are using less than 1,000 rows. Now, the next question is, well, what do you do if you have over 1,000 rows? And, is there anything we can do? The answer to that is yes. And that's where I will move to this second part of this first use case. I've actually seen two ways to do this. There is the individual Kerbal on YouTube has a really great video on using one approach, and it was using DAX. And I want to say it was some kind of exporting data. But a alternative approach is using a paginated report. And if there's anybody who is an expert in paginated reports, it is Sue, because I know Sue uses a lot of them. So I'm going to jump over here, and I'm going to do this. Now, I'm not going to get too in depth on this, and reason being is number one, it would probably take the full hour. I also have a blog write up and a whole video on this, so I'm going to kind of give you the high level kind of overview, just to kind of explain, and then I'll provide the resources. But let me, if I jump over to, I think I'll just stay right here. So in my report, I've got this second page where you can see I've got 1,000 records. And I've got over here, I've got some filters in place. What paginated reports are great for is, and let me just jump over to my paginated report. I have that one up. First, I have to refresh it here. This is one I created. Now, paginated reports are very easy to create once you create a semantic model. And in fact, I did this in just a couple of minutes. Let me just go ahead and select. I've got some parameters here, which I'm going to touch on. These become very important. But essentially, I've got a very simple paginated report. I don't care how it looks. All I care about is I've got it created. It's in a table form, and I've got the fields that I want. And there might be cutoff. There might be more here, but this is what I want. I've created this separately. This is in my, if I go back in my workspace, I've got my paginated report already created here. So I'm going to go ahead and leverage this. But here's the thing with paginated reports is when you trigger a normal paginated report, unless you include any filters, it's going to pass the entire data set to your paginated report. So what I've done is I've actually, within paginated reports, you can add in what's called parameters or filters to then filter out that paginated report. So what I've done is you can actually recreate then and pass the filters that I want from my Power BI report through Power Automate into that. And I'm going to kind of show the flow at a high level just to kind of give you a flavor for it. But let me give an example. So here I have, if I had no filters in my paginated report, it would send the full 3,000 rows. Even if I'm over here and I'm filtering it, still all I'm telling the paginated report is send the full thing. But what I've got over here is I've added this just to kind of so you can see it here. Let's say I choose, I'll choose a few here just so I can get to, see if I can get to 1,000. There we go. Now what I want to basically do is I want to pass these parameters, these filters. I've got two of them set up, one for year, and I have one for the carrier. And you can see I've got all this. These are just a concatenated version. So I've created a simple DAX measure to concatenate all my filters. If I pass these in the right format to my paginated report in Power Automate, it will essentially apply those same filters. Now, what I can't do, though, is just randomly click over here, just like I could in my first example. That unfortunately won't work. So you have to set up some kind of way to filter that. But let me jump over and let me jump back over to my desktop version because I want to kind of show this. And I will have a link. I have a full write-up on this as well because this can get a little technical, but let's go ahead and edit this. And it's this first one here. So again, I've got the same flow up here, this Power BI button clicked. There is a whole bunch of stuff in the middle here. And then down at the bottom is this, here is essentially the Power Automate. If I go into add an action and I go find the Power BI connector, there's a lot of great steps that can be done. One particularly is refreshing, quickly, easy to refresh that. But there is the export, let's see, which one did I use? I believe it was export, it's one of these here, export file for paginated reports. It's this one right here. Basically what this will do is trigger that paginated report and allow you to export it to a CSV or Excel, which I've done here. So basically all you have to do is tell it what workspace and what report and then the format. So I've chosen Excel. But what I have to do, though, is add in parameters. And they're way down and hidden down at the bottom is a option here to add in. And I've added, this is basically a dynamic filter, which is created by all the previous steps. And what I'm going to give you is a visual here. Let me jump back to my, oops, sorry. Let me jump to I've got a picture here, which hopefully will give a visual as to how I want this to work. Okay. So what I've got is I could hard code this in, but it has to be in this format, this JSON format. If I pass these values to this parameter value here within Power Automate, I can then pass those parameters, those filters, to the paginated report. So what I've had to do is come up with a way with how do I take that information from Power BI that's being passed to my Power Automate button, and I need to put it into this format. And that's essentially what these steps are doing. Let me switch over to that. That's essentially what all these steps are doing. It's basically refiguring this, pulling out the information from my Power BI, putting it in strings, and then putting it into a JSON format. So again, I'm not going to go through this, but I will have at the end of this. I do have, in fact, let me go ahead and post that right now, just so I don't forget. I have a complete write-up. And I have a video that will walk through this in case anybody is interested later. And it kind of walks through the process. So, but that will allow you to export it. The other great thing about this approach is I can do it in Excel, I can do it in CSV. The previous example, it's very easy to export it in CSV. You can still export data in Excel. Just some additional steps that have to be put into place, but this either one gives you different options. And of course, this will work even if I have less than 1,000 rows. It'll take the same approach. And essentially, if I do the same thing, if I run the flow, it's going to, this one takes a little longer to trigger, but essentially what I'll get is, if I go back to an earlier one, here would be the exact same Excel file. I use the exact same filtering, and there's my more than 1,000 rows. So a great way to address that 1,000 row limit. I'm going to pause there for any questions, and unless I went too fast. So Sue, Anthony, any questions?
Have got questions. Yeah, paginated reports are brilliant for, like you say, not being tied to that 1,000 row limit. I think I read somewhere that that Christopher Finlan, who was the program manager, I'm not sure if he is now, was very, very specific about that, because it's a fabulous way to download lots of data if you need to. The first one was, is there a limit of records to export, which you've very clearly answered with the fact that, that your first example, it was 1,000. A question from Anthony was, are there any gotchas to using Power Automate Direct in Power BI? As some of the Power Platform components can misbehave with each other. You've made it look very simple, and I know I do struggle sometimes with Power Automate.
I will say,
any gotchas?
A lot of trial and error. This whole process of the manipulating the variables and the strings and getting it into a JSON format. I mean, this was not a 5-minute task. This was a lot of trial and error. Some actions you run into require a premium license. So to me, I think the main gotchas are understanding what licenses, what might be required, and a lot of trial and error. The other thing too, which I won't cover here today, is a lot of steps require certain connections. Yeah. And if those can break. So, but it really opens up a lot of possibilities when you start to.
Definitely. You almost need to put aside some time to actually understand how it works, which ties in perfectly with the next question, which was, is the use of Power Automate within Power BI included in the Power BI Pro license? And we said no, but it's like you mentioned, there are premium features for which you need to have a license. So have you got 2 or 3 just things that you would need the premium license for, just to give an example?
Yeah, one action that I use a lot is using sending an HTTP request, so you can do like API calls. I've worked with Word documents that require a premium license, but all of this, your standard Power Automate license should work fine. And even if you have a Power BI, if you don't have a pro license, I believe if you're just making the report for yourself, it should still work as well. You just simply can't share the report because of that. So if you have a regular license, but everything I've done here, you should not have to have a premium license.
Just a quick one was which you mentioned, you can export it in PDF and then you can set up the scheduling with an email address like every morning. You mentioned that, so that was one of the questions about how to schedule sending off the PDF report. And one of the questions was if the report settings say export data set to don't allow, end users shouldn't be able to export any data then, should they?
I haven't tried that, so I don't know the answer on that one.
I'd be very surprised if you could, if you've set the report to not allow, but it depends if you leave it in the where you set it to not to connect.
Yeah, and I do see a couple of things about using connectors with service account.
Yeah.
I would agree with that if I create the flow and I leave. So we won't get into that, but connections are very important when you're dealing with Power Automate.
And then another question was, is there an option, when you sent the run the flow to your email address, someone asked, can you set it up to go to somebody else's email address?
Oh, I know definitely.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, when you go to send the email, you can hard code it in. You can do dynamic. We do this all the time. You can send it to the you can type in a physical email address. You can use dynamic fields by pulling in. Say you have Active Directory groups. It works out. I have a development account, so like I don't have a long list of people to.
Yeah. I know I've done that. And then Fernandez asked me to say, talk to the users to avoid the exporting step. So I think there is that it's about keeping the data within the system. Sometimes you do need to export it, but it should be a carefully considered option.
You mean like if it's got like sensitive data and all that?
Yeah.
I mean, that would certainly be, you have to be careful about all that. If it's sensitive data, anything like that, that's.
And as fast as we're answering them, another one. Anila said he thought premium license is required. No, I'm not saying that, Fernando. I thought premium licenses were required for refreshing the semantic model, but Anthony has said, no, you don't need a premium license to refresh a data set. He has Pro and he can do it. Yeah. So, okay. So I think we're good to go.
All right. Let's jump over to the next.
Tim, just one more question. Just going on to that, the flow you created earlier when you're talking about connectors and service principals and users, is when you create that flow to start with, so you're creating that flow under your user account, your Office 365 user account. Is that right?
Yes, and I think I know where you're going with this. I believe yes. So this is being created with my account.
Okay.
So Anthony, is there? I mean,
So essentially, if you wanted to create that when you're building your report, you'd somehow have to log into desktop with some other account to be able to then create that flow.
This also gets into sharing. I did not. I'd have to refresh my memory because I think where you're going is I create this flow, I share it to the group, and then can other people access it? And you have to make sure you have to share the flow. But we do this quite a bit, and I've done this, but you may run into where you have to share the flow and stuff like that. It's just like with Power Apps. Sometimes you have to share the app. You have to share the app so people can run it. And there is ways to set up a flow to be run as, so you're not. So these are like where you get to the trial and error, right? When as you're testing. So
okay, cool.
But it's a great thing to ask for because there's just so many little nuances that come with this.
Okay. So cool. Great. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Anthony. Perfect.
Okay. All right, let's talk SharePoint Document Libraries. So I know a lot of organizations use SharePoint, especially if you're moving away from, I'm going to jump over to one. You're moving away from, the standard shared network drives And let me jump to an example. Of course, I have here we go. So I have a document library that I'm using. Now, in my case, let's say I'm managing some projects and I've got a couple of IDs here, and this library got a handful of documents, but this could be, hundreds or so. And I've set this up because I've got, these are documents, and let's say in my case, I have to review them. And so I've created this library, very simple library. I've got the file I've uploaded, I've given it a name. I've added this additional metadata, right? These columns that you can add in SharePoint Document Libraries. So I can indicate the project number, and I've got this column that I use to keep track of, did I review it or did I approve it? And I just got a couple of things here. And I could add many more columns to this, but let's keep this very simple. So this is great. So I come in here, I click on the document, I have to review it, and then I review it. That looks great. And then I would go here to, to edit all the details. And let's say I've got lots of projects. Well, it could also be where I have a Power BI report with, say, financial data, right, of this project. Boy, wouldn't it be great if I could just pull all this in, have my financial data in Power BI, and then know what documents I've had, and maybe if I know which ones I need to review. Well, the great thing is I can do that. I can pull it in. Now, a lot of folks might be well aware of you can connect to a folder and combine documents, right? If these were all, say, Excel files. But I don't want to do that because these are all Word documents. There's no data to combine, but what I want is I want this data that is showing on the screen. So let me jump over to my report here, and I've got that. So I've done here is I've connected to my document library. The one great thing about SharePoint is every document library has a corresponding list that captures all of the data, the metadata behind it. So I've been able to connect to that library. I've been able to pull in, this is a SharePoint ID. There's my metadata that I've added, this column. I've got the file name, I've got my status, and then I've got links. I've actually got 3 that are all pointing to the same file. I've added 3 here because the behavior is different. But this is great because now that I've got this, and I've pulled in like even this field, say document status, I could quickly say, you know what, I'm just going to filter the ones I need to review. And I could go in here and I could click on one to say, you know what, I'm going to click on it. It takes me right to the file. I don't even have to bother going to SharePoint, and I could review it and I'm good to go. So let's jump back over to that. And this is very easy to do. In fact, so let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to quickly go over here to get data. I'm going to go up here to more, and I'm going to search for my SharePoint. Now, there's the folder, which is what I would do if I want to combine data. I can get some information, the name of the file and so forth. But what I want is the metadata, and I want more information. So I'm going to connect to this list. It is going to ask me, do I want this? Well, first of all, I need my site. So let me go ahead and put in my site to my to the SharePoint, and it is just the base URL. You can do 2.0 and 1.0. 2.0 just gives you some bare bone. It's great for connecting to lists. It gives you just some basic information. I have a full write-up on that, the comparison, but I'm going to do 1.0. This will actually get all of the available metadata that I want. So I'm going to go that route. And it's going to shoot me over to Power Query. Well, first I have to actually, let's see, where is my, okay, first I have to pick the list. So I'm used to picking out lists, like here's a list, but here is my document library list. It's named the same, and I can just go ahead, but this is the actual list for that. And I can see already there's some of the metadata, and let's go ahead and let me jump over to Power Query, this over. Now, I've got a lot of cleanup to do because it's pulling in everything that is in that document library. And what I was showing was just a subfolder. But just in the interest of time, let me go ahead and just, filter this. I would normally do my filtering, and I would get down to the data that I want. So now I'm connected to my list, and there is a lot here. There's a bunch of these columns here, and if I scroll to the right, I will see things such as project ID. There is my custom column I've added. There's that document review status. SharePoint does internally remove spaces, so I have that. And I can keep going, and I can see other columns as well. And a lot of the stuff I just don't need. But if anybody is dealing with permissions, I can actually click here, and I can actually see, I can get access to who has permissions. These are tied to the groups that have permissions. But I can go all the way further here, and I can see field values as text. And I can click here, and these are all records. But if I expand, if I click in here, I can see all of the additional metadata. So now there's all this hidden data that I can use. So let me just quickly do a couple of cleanup here. Let me get rid of a lot of these columns. So I'm going to choose my columns, and I only want ID. This column here has either of these have like URLs that I could use. This project ID, and these are the two columns I've added. And I want one more, and it's this field values as text. So I'll click OK. This cleans it up a little bit. So now all of a sudden there's a URL to my document. Here's my metadata that I have, and then I have this record. So I'm actually going to now expand this further because I want to pull out some key data points. Again, if I just click here and I click on any one, there's a whole bunch of data points that I might want to pull in. But I'm only going to pull in a couple, and I'm going to pull in, let's see, this file leaf ref, this file type, because it'll tell me what the type of file is. And then I have one more down here that I'm going to scroll down, and it's file ref. And this, again, trial and error, poking through the list to see what data I want. But there now I've got some more information. There's the name of the file. File types, now mine are all Word documents, but let's say I was concerned about others. And then this is, now I've got another sort of item here. Like, again, I could now create another, URL to this as well. And I'm going to give a couple of URL examples. And I'm going to jump to a query that I've already created. And what I've done is I've taken this last column here, right here, and I've just concatenated it. Let's see here, added custom. I've just added it by basically saying, take this value and just, add in this, in advance. And now I've got myself a direct link that I can to my document. So that's the first thing I did. So very easy. Now, the other thing which I've done in this, and I'll skip to the end here, is I took that original. So here is one of the default available columns, and I've got this nice URL. I've duplicated it here. I've got the same thing, but what I've done is I've just removed here because I want to give you a flavor for the URL can change the behavior when you click on the URL. So again, this is all just trial and error, trying to come up with the best type of experience that I wanted in my situation. But that's all I had to do. And now when I go ahead and close this, and it'll go ahead and add that in, and then this again is the same result. So now let's talk. The other thing I had to do is for all the fields that are URLs, you have to just go up here and make sure you change the data category to web URL, and it'll provide the URL in there. And the other thing which I've done, if I go to my table and I change the formatting, if you search for URL, you can toggle this on and off. You can also create a custom text and so forth. But just to make it clean, I've toggled this on. So now that I have a very simple link here. So let's talk why the difference is. Well, let me jump to my report. Let's see here. Here we go. This first one, this is one where I just concatenated just the path. So if I hover over it, I've just basically I created that first column. If I click on it, what it actually does is it downloads it in my example. So as I'm using it here, I've downloaded it. So maybe I don't want that. So that's one example of behavior. This next one is that server redirected URI. This is the one that had that interactive preview action at the end of the URL, and this is one of the default fields that's available. If I click on this, it opens it up, but it's in a sort of a preview mode, which might be great if I don't want anybody editing it. Let me close that. But this last one, again, this is where I removed the last part of that URL, so it doesn't have that action item, and I click on that, it actually opens it up into the document itself, so I could go ahead and interact with it. So it's just being aware that there are different ways that you can create these hyperlinks.
I'm just going to say I love this, really love this, because it's such useful documentation that you can put in a Power BI report. Just, because quite often, you'll store things, say, you need to go to this or have a look, and just to be able to click and bring SharePoint in, and I love it, Tim. Right, I'll stop.
Another thing is in SharePoint, you can create views, right? You've got lots of documents, and you could create a view in SharePoint, but see in Power BI, maybe I want to create additional filtering, and I want to create my own sort of user experience way to find documents. So again, it all really depends on what's your use case. So it's the point here is I'm just providing some different examples of what can be done. So all right, this was the second use case, and we're right on schedule. So I'm going to pause. Are there any questions?
No, we've been chatting amongst ourselves. I think everybody has just been too busy watching. There were lots of questions in the first bit about connections, etc. And we've been, Anthony's been posting the links in. Anil said, can this status be updated directly from PBI?
I think he's referring to right here.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great segue into my third use case. So I will answer that one next.
Oh, okay, cool.
So
I can see straight away, because I keep project documentation in SharePoint, and then sometimes if you have a bespoke table that is then used as a lookup, that you can just have like a little button to say go here, and I can see lots of things I would use this for. So yeah.
All right,
I'll stop talking.
Let's move on to the next use case, which is a follow-on to Anil's question, and that is, can I update? So let's go here. So, yes, the Power App is the approach I've taken here. So here's that same example, and let's say I'm looking at this. I've clicked on my document. This looks great scope of work. I'm going to go here and I'm going to mark this as approved, and I'm going to go ahead. Oh, great. And I get a network error, which should not happen, but it looks like it did. It did change it. Now, so this is where a simple embedded Power App can add some additional functionality by now being able to do that. Now, the one downside is this does not change yet, because I am connecting to a SharePoint document library. It is in import mode only. So once I refresh the data, this will change. But there is that's the initial caveat I will add. But this gives me the ability to quickly go through these and say, well, that one's I've approved. And this one is in review. So I can keep doing this. I can click on here, and then I can use this simple app. Now, this one I've actually tried to make it even a little smaller. I tried to make a small app. And again, Sue, this follows on to my last year's presentation about embedding a Power App. But I won't go through the full in-depth, but I will touch on somewhat, how this can be done. So the first thing I've done is I have created a very simple Power App. Now, I'm used to using Power Apps to connecting to a SharePoint list, But again, in Power Apps, you can connect to the SharePoint document list, which I've done here, and it's giving me access then to the fields, the data fields here, and that's what I'm connecting to. So I'm connecting to the document library list in my Power App. So I have already gone ahead and created this Power App. I've got one created here. Let's see here. So I went ahead and created one. You know, I did this one on the side, and this one I actually customized it. Oh, this one is, I'll have to, I'll get through to connecting to it here. But so you can go ahead and create your Power App first. And I wanted a small custom sized one, which I've done. So let's talk about how can I quickly add it. And again, I'm just going to hit this one very high. I've got there, you know, videos on this. There's other videos out there that others have done, that how easy this can be, but I'm going to kind of touch on a couple of ways to get people started. The first thing is, you'll notice I'm in Power BI service right now. I am in my published report. I can go over here to my desktop version. There is a Power Apps visual, but unfortunately the connection, for me, it does not work. I run into issues with the connection. So I don't do this work in a desktop version. What I will do is I will go up here and I will edit this report in the Power BI service. This used to work way back in the day with Microsoft, but then something changed, so I only can get the connections to work properly. This integration between Power BI and Power Apps by editing it in the Power BI a published report.
Yeah, it's easier, isn't it, in the published report than I did use it in a desktop once, but I found it much easier in the actual published report.
Yeah, if you are just adding in a standalone Power App, it's fine in Power BI. It's where the problems arise with, and I'll show the integration. There isn't an integration; it does not work. But so let me show how easy it is to do this, though. So I'm going to add in my Power App visual. I'm going to go ahead and resize it over here. Again, it has some instructions. It needs to know my field or fields. So I need to know what field I'm going to pass over to my Power App. And what I want to know is, since I'm editing the file, I want to point to the specific file. So I'm going to use this ID field because this is going to be a unique identifier. So I am going to drag this over here. Now, because by default it's trying to count it, I got to make sure I don't summarize because I want to pass the value. And now it says you want to create a new one or choose an app. I've already pre-built it, so I'm going to do that. One other thing, and I did forget to mention this on Power Automate, is up here, and the same holds true when you're creating a Power Automate button, is you can choose a different Power Platform environment. So I have a different environment. I've got a training environment that I'm going to use. So I'm going to choose the app. I've got a blank one here that I'm going to pull in, and I'm going to go ahead and add it. And then I'm going to go ahead here to Power Apps, and it'll go ahead and send me over to Power Apps. Now, the nice thing is I'm going to keep both my report and Power Apps open because you can kind of toggle between the two, especially when you're testing. And we'll let that load for a minute. I will say, in my experience, I don't know others are, but Power Automate was a little easier to learn. Power Apps had a little bit of a higher learning curve, although there is a book out there. Anybody is interested.
I would agree.
So here I am in Power Apps. The integration, the key thing is right here. It's called Power BI integration. That is the control that connects the two. If anybody is creating customized SharePoint forms in Power Apps, you'll see SharePoint integration. So this is the control that links the two. And essentially what it is if I go back to my report, because I'm passing the ID field, just picture in your mind a little table of this ID of these rows being passed over to my Power App. I now have that ability to use that control. And this is a simple form. This is just a very simple form that I've created. I've connected to my SharePoint document library list, just cleaned out all the fields I don't need, and I've added a button. And the only thing I have to do is add in to tell it, because this is a form, I need to tell it which record in that document library to show, because it can only show one record. So all I have to do is go up to my items property, which right now is blank, and I'm just going to use a lookup function. This is how I do it. I'm going to look up, and it basically, I'm saying I want to look up in my data source, which in this case is the documents list. That's the connection in my Power App that I've pointed. I'm connected to SharePoint. And then what am I looking for? Well, I want where the ID. Now this is the SharePoint ID field. So again, I have to know what field in SharePoint I'm looking up in my list. It just so happens that I'm using the same field names, and I want the first item in my Power BI. And let me type this out: my Power BI integration .data control. And if I hit a period, it's pulling in. Now again, this is the field that I've added into my control, so I can do it. Now if I hover over here to this right here, I can see that this is a table. And I should be able to, there's an error. Why is there an error? Oh, it's because I need to close it. Let's try that. If I click here, I can see that this is a table, and I can hover down and I can see, wow, there's a list. There's all the fields that I've passed over. What I'm doing is saying, go to the first, find the first one. Well, that's fine, because all I care about is the first one, because when the user starts clicking on them, they're clicking on one record, it's passing that one record, and I'm pulling the first record, which will always be that one record. So all I have to do is that, click OK, and there it is. You might get a delegation warning. Sometimes you do get a delegation warning, but because there is limits to how much data Power Apps pulls in, it's going to be irrelevant in my case, because I'm only ever looking at one record. And that's all I have to do. And then if I go over here, I could save and publish this. I would save it here, and I would publish this. And it does take a few minutes, but then what will happen is, because of this integration, because I've done that one simple thing, when I would go over here, it's going to take a second. So I have to refresh it. All I have to do is click away, click back, and sometimes it does take a few minutes. Great time to get coffee. But what you're going to end up with is essentially this thing here. And again, remember, I'm saying I'm clicking here. I'm now passing this one record over, and I'm telling my Power App to look up where that one the record equals this. And it's a great way to do this. And of course, you can add other Power App customization, confirmation screens and so forth. But in the grand scheme of things, this is one way to do the integration between the two. So I wanted to save about 9 minutes. And again, I do have, there's videos out there on how to do this. I've got a few that kind of walk through this as well. But let me pause, Sue, for any questions. We got, looks like 8 minutes left.
No questions, I don't think, unless I've missed any. I was listening to you. No, there was a question about sharing the report in SharePoint, and something about, and questions as well about licenses again. But it's, have I missed any questions, anyone?
I will run into.
I think, Tim, the main one was the one about, if you share this report with others, would viewers need at least viewing permission to the SharePoint site to see the report? Now, I asked a clarifying question on that, which it seems, I think, if you click a link, one of the hyperlinks, I'm pretty sure that you would need at least viewer access to the SharePoint site to be able to see whatever the contents are of that hyperlink.
Yes, you definitely. If you don't have access to the SharePoint site, you might. Now, I'm going to say I've not actually tested this, but you might actually still see the link because you're pulling in that data. But if you click on it and you don't have access to that SharePoint site or that item, then it would probably give you that user access denied that you would get in as if you were trying to access any normal SharePoint site or a file you don't have access to. So that should happen. The same thing would be with like Power Apps. I have run into this with Power Apps, especially with, you've got to make sure you publish the app. You have to make sure you share the app. There does get to be these nuances, right? This is why folks like us get paid the big bucks to do all this, right? To deal with all the nuances. But there's a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing, but if you are building out tools for people, this might be a time saver. So
yeah, I think what it does is it just because some people love playing with Power BI, and some people are happy to explore and to nip forward, and then others, and I've got customers that really are not interested in, they just want that button. Just give me the button. I don't want to be interested, I don't want to have to click on export this and do this, whatever. I just want it automated and set up for me. But I've used this type of example, and it's brilliant. It does take, like you say, it does take some fiddling with and understanding how to do it. But with ChatGPT and Copilot, it makes it so much easier for you.
ChatGPT, I will say, has gotten really good at helping. Walking through like different things you can do in Power Apps and Power Automate and Power BI. So
yeah, it is. It's just I'm in and out of it pretty much all the time. Just sort of testing things over, looking at scenarios. In fact, I got it to help me set up my keyboard. So I was like, why won't it do it? I was trying to do a logic flow from one thing to another. Abdullah Hasbib, and I'm sorry if I've pronounced it wrong. So can we update a SharePoint list manually directly in Power BI instead of going to the list in SharePoint? I suspect probably not, because Power BI is a reporting tool, so it will take you into the Excel, but I can't see that you can manually update an Excel document within Power BI.
Yeah, that what I understand, the Microsoft is working on allowing some write back capabilities with Power BI, because to do, as I understand, things like that, but I don't have any more details.
I think, Tim, that's more to do with writing back to the SQL database. So their translytics that they're going for. Or that's my understanding, is it's more writing back to the SQL database in Fabric, but then that might then evolve onwards to then have that ability to write back to other places. Who knows?
Yeah.
You need to refresh data in the Power BI, because Anil asked, how long does the document status change when you refresh the Power BI visual? Depends how complex your model is, Anil. But like Aurora says, you just have to refresh the data in the Power BI report, and if it's fairly straightforward, then it takes seconds. But that depends how good your model is, Anil.
Yep. And we run into that. If you have a SharePoint document with a lot, like, I don't remember if it was thousands or hundreds, but the refresh could take a couple of minutes. And I have heard from end users, like, they want that refresh. But if you were doing a SQL, like if you were maintaining data, well, what I was talking about is a SharePoint list, but like using a Power App, if you're connecting to SQL and you have a direct connection, that might be that could be where you don't have to do the refreshing. But
the only thing is, Tim.
Yeah, sorry, Tom's just said it. A good point. He said, great session today. Thank you, Tim. Could you have Power App do the auto refresh for you?
You could have Power Automate. You could trigger the Power Automate, but again, the user still would have to refresh their browser.
Yeah. And Julie mentioned she saw an inspiring presentation about using a Power App to create simulations that allowed execs to vary values and then get simulated resultant metrics.
I'll try to find that. I watched it myself as well.
Good.
It was basically integrating Power Apps So instead of, it was building a scenario analysis in Power BI, but hooking it into a Power App. So then, whereas with numeric parameters, it's quite limited, which is what I found. Whereas a Power Apps gives you a bit more flexibility to do certain things. I mean, the only concern that I've got with the refreshing is the limit of the refreshes that you can do to a SharePoint. Because you can only do 8 a day if you're on Pro.
Yeah, depending. Yeah, so Anthony, that's another good point. It's depending on if you got a premium, you can up that, but you can run into this limit with some of the refreshing. So again, it's another nuance that comes into play. There's so these are things just to be aware of that we run into.
And Aurora's made a very good point. She said she loves integrations and that you've chosen some really great real life examples. So there's, some really fabulous response saying thank you, Tim, because I think the options that you've shared with us and shown us, we can all real sort of like, oh, wow, I could use that. And several people have actually said they would be able to use that with work that they're working on now. So, yeah. Did you want to put your link to your website and
I'll
your
put that back
again?
up.
Because although, Tim's made it look very easy, and it's not that easy. Some of it is a bit easier, but some of it has things that you need to be aware of. But, if you follow some of the examples, then it's, it's incredibly useful. Next week, we've got Eric taking us through Semantic Link Library, which is just another fabulous tool. Let me turn the recordings off. That was brilliant, Tim.